Let's talk about refugees. Let's talk about displaced people. Okay, it's really inappropriate. In light of the tragic events last weekend in Paris, many Western countries are being pressured to reevaluate their response to the Syrian refugee crisis. And by reevaluate, I mean to say that some people want their governments to slam their borders shut, turn all the lights off, and yell, "We're not home! Sorry!" Some citizens are worried that accepting Syrian refugees is a security threat, or a cultural threat, or something they just don't want to do right now. But are Syrian refugees actually dangerous? Should we be welcoming refugees into our country? Let's talk about it. The Syrian civil war is very complicated, like an 8-sided Rubik's Cube of feelings. Here is a very basic explanation of what happened. During the Arab Spring of 2011, rebels tried to overthrow Syria's dictatorship. Civil war broke out, and the volatile and stable environment was conducive to the creation of a militaristic terror group we know as ISIS, or ISIL, or IS, or the Daesh. They're different names for essentially the same thing. You hear that last one, Daesh, way less frequently because the organization hates it and threatens to cut out the tongue of people who use it. Regular civilians were trapped in this complicated, bloody, multi-side conflict, which led many of them to flee their homes for either safer ground within Syria or for asylum in other countries. So how many Syrian refugees are there? The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees tells us that they have registered 4.3 million people as persons of concern from Syria. Persons of concern is a blanket statement used to refer to the people whose needs and protection are of interest to the UNHCR, including refugees, asylum seekers, and internally displaced people. Kind of like how we take all the good television and we group it together under one common name, Shondaland. Considering that Syria had a population of about 22 million in 2011 before the country's civil war broke out, that means about 20% of the population of Syria is registered with the UNHCR. I know what you're thinking. That is a huge number of people. The only person that would call a number ending in million a small number is Donald Trump. No wonder the Western world is so overwhelmed right now. But wait, the vast majority of these refugees haven't made it to the EU. They're actually situated mostly in the neighboring countries of Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. In order to claim their right to refugee status in an EU country, they have to physically be inside of the EU. And right now, for most Syrians, the only way to physically get to an EU country is through illegal and potentially deadly means. This can mean paying a huge sum of money to a virtual stranger for a seat on a dinghy that, in an ideal situation, will cross the entire Mediterranean Sea somehow unscathed. Who drives the dinghy? The will of God, that's who. And remember, you'll only have the pleasure of living this horrible experience if you actually get on a boat in the first place. Because remember, this is illegal. So the guy you're paying to hopefully save your family could totally you over if he wanted to. Despite that nightmarish reality, around 680,000 Syrians have made it to Europe. That still sounds like a lot of people, but to put it in perspective, that's approximately 0.1% of the current population of the EU. And that's a generous approximation. My calculator was feeling giving today. So what about North America? Canada has committed to accepting 25,000 Syrian refugees by the end of this year, and Obama has committed to accepting 10,000 applications in 2016. But again, both countries are being pressured by their citizens and their inner territories to change that mandate. On that note, let's do some rapid-fire debunking. Syrians will have more babies than our citizens. Soon they'll outnumber us. The Syrian population growth rate in 2011 was 0.7%, which is actually 0.1% smaller than the United States was that year. Most refugees are young men susceptible to radicalization. Like 55% of all refugees are either children or senior citizens. Outside of that demographic, many refugees are traveling with family members who rely upon them. That makes them much lower risk for radicalization. Besides, do you really think people who are raring to join ISIS would be fleeing ISIS? Not to oversimplify here, but that would be like me saying, I really want a scoop of Rocky Road ice cream right now. And then instead of walking to the Cold Stone Creamery around the corner, I run like 2,500 kilometers in the opposite direction, hoping to stumble across a half-eaten cone that some kid dropped on a boardwalk somewhere. They're sending us pre-radicalized militants! All of the identified attackers in the Paris attacks were European nationals from France and Belgium. There is no credible modern example of this happening. But one of them had a Syrian passport! It was a fake. No, it was a fake. Sit down. Haven't we accepted enough Syrians already? Canada has accepted 2,300 Syrians since January of this year, and the US has accepted, drumroll please, 1,500 since 2011. 1,500, that's 300 refugees a year. I went to high school with more people than that. Hell, I'm pretty sure I asked more than 1,500 people to prom. A lot of people said no, had to ask some neighbors, who also said no. You know what, let's not talk about it. Moral implications aside, and not to be cliche, but Syrians are just like us. They're educated, they have families they love, they go on Facebook, and they want to live safe, happy lives. The only difference that truly matters between Westerners and Syrians is that Syrian refugees have endured an unimaginable hell, at the end of which they're often left with nothing but their unyielding will to live. What happened in Paris was a heart-wrenching tragedy. But it's just as tragic to hold all Syrians, or more broadly, all Muslims, accountable for the actions of a violent, apocalyptic terror cult. I'm not just saying apocalyptic, that's actually their endgame. They want to bring about the apocalypse. You can read about it in the links below. In fact, when you alienate Muslims, you're playing right into Daesh's hands. They want us to turn away from these refugees to support their messaging, that the world hates Muslims. By their logic, this will drive more recruits to their ranks and help them bring about their goal, which, as I mentioned earlier, is literally the apocalypse. Daesh has already stolen land and life from the people of Iraq and Syria. Do not let them steal their identity as well. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to read more about this, you can find all of the sources and more information in the description box below. If you like this video, you can click subscribe. I make a new one every single week. You can also find me on social media below, and there's another video like this one in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.